Abo, yeah.
I have a number class, Nana.
Yeah, but you know, can start to.
Jai Kasam.
Salim BGM.
On bound count, a band left.
Masa, mu you do. When you did, I'm going to join the class.
All right. Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
You are all welcome. Welcome back to the second semester.
Thank you, sir. Welcome back to.
You are welcome.
Great. So I think many more of your colleagues are pouring in. We have a 98 of you present. We're going to start straight away, but if you do have some housekeeping activities from the other semester that you want us to talk about briefly, we can do that. But today's class is going to be the beginning of Arch322. That's Archaeology of West Africa. And although the semester has been squeezed into, how many is it, 6 weeks? How many weeks are we doing? 6 or?
Yes, 6.
Yes,
4 weeks.
Somebody says 4 weeks. Okay, all right. So there's so many people trying to join us here. So anyway, so you are satisfied with your results and grades from the 323, right? I hope we don't have anybody with some issues there.
Everything cool now that.
the name of your lecture?
It will come. All right, so I'm going to start sharing the screen. There are so many of your colleagues coming. There is a message here. It says, good morning. It says, please, some of us are still not reflecting on Sakai. Yes, the head of the department is working on the Sakai issue. None of my courses has been linked, myself and other colleagues of ours. So yes, I'm aware of that, and that will be dealt with. So the head promised me that he will be working on that today. Okay, so we will get that done. Let me begin by sharing the screen, and then we can start our activity for the day, and then we'll keep out admitting those that are coming in. Okie dokie. So if you can, there is a bright, you can go ahead and tell us what you think here. Bright, I can see your hand up. What is the matter?
Hello, sir.
Yes, please go ahead.
With the Sakai issue, I didn't hear what you said.
Well, I said that a few of the courses have not been linked yet because there is some problem with the Sakai system. So the head of the department could not do it directly. So he promised to get that fixed by going to the UGSC to get it done. So let's give him some time for this morning to see. Okay. Okay, if you sent one email about your results and you've not heard from me, probably I didn't see it. So it's good to send a reminder or resend that email, okay? Because every result that has an issue, I try to work on it. So if you have a genuine problem that you want me to look at, please do not hesitate to send it, okay? All right, so I think we will leave those who are in the waiting room for now and start with this activity. So for your information, this Zoom lecture is being recorded, and this is to enable your colleagues who have not been, are unable to join us to make use of this class. If you have any problem with that, kindly let me know so that we can see what to do. But for now, all this is going to be recorded, right? All right, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining the class. And as I said, this will be a combination of in-person class and also online or virtual engagement as we are doing this morning. What I will do to give you some certainty will be to let you know which of the days will be in situ, like in person, and which ones we may have to get done off-site, okay? So I will be doing that later on. So we are going to start by reviewing the course outline, okay? So here we have Arch322 Archaeology of West Africa, circa 500 BC to AD 1950, okay? 1950. And I'm sure that we all now know how to convert our dates from BC to ADs and from CE to AD and so on and so forth. These are some of the things that you want to get before you get out. This class will be handled by two of us, Mr. Daniel Kuma and William Blepo. So the two of us will be taking this class for the next few weeks. My office hours are on Wednesdays at 1 to 2 p.m. And my office is located at the School of Arts on main campus. So you can also book appointment by sending me an email. We can also use that. Mr. Daniel Kuma will soon let us know what days he will be available. I think he's online with us. Mr. Kuma, if you are there, kindly show yourself. Okay, maybe he's in a meeting. All right, so I have also provided a Zoom link. So this will be the repeating Zoom link or recurring Zoom link that we'll be using. This very one we are using this morning will be the link that we'll use throughout the period of this class. So please bear that in mind. I have also posted that for City Campus, just in case some of them miss their own class and would like to make use of the main campus one, and vice versa. So I have made available that time slot as well. So we go straight away to look at the course description. Okay. I'm keeping this tab here so that I can meet people. So what it says here is that the course explores the inception of present-day complex societies of West Africa and how they evolved and their vicissitudes in the period 500 BC to AD 1950. So essentially what we'll be doing in this class is to try to understand the beginnings of complex societies in West Africa, including our own space here, Ghana. So we'll be looking at some core examples from Ghana, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Dahomey, and so on and so forth. We may be looking at some of the sites that you already have discussed, like Ife, Benin. We'll look at Bego. We'll look also at places like Wedoku, Ladoku, Shah Hills, and so on and so forth. We may look at Ayawaso, Adanse, and other complex sites or complex societies that have emerged in this part of the world, the West African sub-region, especially by 500 BC up to 1950. Now, when you look at 500 BC, this is what coincides with what in Europe is referred to as what the classical period, a period when Rome or Roman and Greek civilization emerged. And so in West Africa also, we say we have witnessed the rise of complex societies right up to 1950s when our country started gaining their political independence from the Europeans. And so what we'll be doing essentially will be to look at all the factors that may have contributed directly or indirectly to the rise of complexity in terms of social organization, trade organization, political institutions, technology, and so on and so forth. The themes include general characteristics of West African societies in the Iron Age. So what we're saying is that having progressed from the Holocene, the late or the New Stone Age to the Iron Age, there were developments that characterize the West African sub-region, and we will be looking at some of those societies and also look at the basic characteristic features that are associated with those societies or polities. We will look at the origins of copper and iron technology. So essentially what we're saying is that in terms of technological development during the Iron Age, we will be examining metallurgical traditions and technology in West Africa. So here we'll be looking at how raw materials were acquired for smelting, what kinds of traditions or practices were associated with iron smelting, for example, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the elements that we'll be looking at. Then we will progress from looking at metallurgical traditions and technology and see how they impacted or affected the local communities within which these technological advancements were developed. So for instance, if we're talking about the Gonja of Ghana, for instance, how did their invention or mastery of iron technology help them to improve on agriculture, to wage their wars by producing weapons, and being able to conquer some of the pre-existing societies that we met. So we will be looking at metallurgy in Ghana. We may also look at the bronze traditions of Ife in Nigeria and Benin. So when we look at the technological traditions, we also want to see how they contributed to the emergence of complexity in West Africa. So what we'll be doing later on is to look at what do we mean by complex societies and what their characteristic features are, and then how these specific technological, social, and cultural developments also aided in their rise. Okay, so many people are coming in late, and I want to keep admitting them. We also look at origins. Okay, in addition to local society, we look at megalith and tumuli sites of the Western Sudan. So megalith and tumuli are some of the cultural innovations that were utilized, particularly in the Sahelian regions of West Africa. That included burial traditions, burial in megaliths, like mound-like structures, burial in jaseke or in huge pots. People were being buried in large pots instead of coffins as we have today. So we'll look at what environmental factors shape that kind of practice among the Malians, for example, and how that constitutes or forms part of the complexity that we were talking about. We also would like to look at urbanism. Urbanism as a means of studying the rise of urban societies, but as well as looking at the characteristic features of polities or societies that we may term as what? Urbanized, okay? So Mr. Kuma in particular will be looking at urbanism in West Africa, and he will be citing some of his recent studies that he has conducted in the Bergu and the Bono region of Ghana, okay? We will also be looking at other factors that may have contributed to the rise of urbanism and complexity in West Africa. And this may include trade and trade contacts and networks. So if you look at West Africa during the last 500 years, for example, there were major trade networks that included the trans-Saharan trade and also the transatlantic trade and trade in enslaved people. These trade networks or international trade connections had major impacts on how our societies evolved over time. And so what we'll be doing is to be picking up some of these major trade networks and look at what commodities were traded, who were involved in the trade, and how these trading activities that occurred during this period affected social organization, power relations, and even the impact on the natural environment, okay? So we'll be looking at the trans-Saharan trade, and the transatlantic commerce and trade in enslaved people. You may be well aware that trade is not just the exchange of commodities, but it also leads to exchange of what? Ideas, exchange of technology, and also of peoples. So that when you take, for instance, the transatlantic trade, during the transatlantic trade, we have many, many people coming from the sub-region like Sierra Leone, from Nigeria, who came to partake of the transatlantic trade because we have the benefit of being on the Gulf of Guinea. And as you can see, we have over 40 of the 63 forts and castles that were built along the coasts of West Africa to aid the trade. That should tell you something, that the volume of trade in the then Gold Coast or the region of Ghana today was very pivotal. And so that brought in many groups of people that later on led to cultural rises and development of syncretism, multi-ethnic societies like Elmina, Cape Coast, Accra, and so on and so forth. You will be well aware that if you take Ghana today, you have Ghanaians whose origins or whose some part of the ancestry will be Dutch, will be British, and so on and so forth. Yes, because when the Europeans were here, some of them were married to our women because they were not coming with their women here. The conditions were so bad that only soldiers, medical doctors were coming to trade in West Africa. And without their women, they had to engage with our women in Ghana and the rest of West Africa. This actually led to the creation of what is sometimes referred to as a mulatto society or peoples of Ghana, the rest of the sub-region. Okay. All right, so we will also continue to look at, in addition to the trade contacts, we will explore some of the socio-political and cultural dynamics that led to social and cultural transformations in West Africa during this European contact. So what we'll be doing in the course of analyzing or exploring the European contact period from AD 1470s until our independence, we have engaged with these Europeans, interacted with them, borrowed their foods, borrowed their religion, their educational systems. Many of our food crops today, right from manioc or cassava to sweet potatoes, to chili peppers, and so many other things were brought to us as a result of what? The transatlantic trade. And these are crops of Southern African or Latin American origin. Today, we have all of them here. They have become part of our staple, especially maize or corn. So we would like to know how some of these trading activities affected our socio-political and cultural dynamics. Today, for instance, when the Gans celebrate Homo Festival, instead of using millet, they are using what? Corn. Okay, so these are some of the factors we'll be looking at. We have some of our chieftaincy institutions that have adopted some of the European iconography and state paraphernalia. So, for example, in the court of many chiefs and the king of Asante, for instance, Asantehene, will be sitting on the Asipim chair, but Asipim chair is not of Ghana's or of Ghanaian origin. This is something that we borrowed from the Europeans and the court of the European royal. And so these are some of the elements that we'll also be looking at as to how we in West Africa have come to the kind of people or society we have today, and how these changes continue to unfold as we engage in different kinds of trade, human contacts, technological innovation, and also the exploration of our own natural environments. Okay. Now we also want to look at the nature, the politics, theory, and practice of archaeology and heritage studies in the sub-region. Okay, what we know is that the practice of any discipline has its own political and social entanglements. What I mean by that is that the nature of research, particularly in this case, archaeological research, heritage conservation, management, are also heavily influenced by who is funding the project, what theoretical frameworks we are looking at, and what we seek to do with the knowledge that we are creating. And so we will look at how politics of funding, for example, affects what topics in West Africa were much more fashionable and attractive to be studied, probably because they attract more funding, or which ones are we selecting based on the Eurocentric biases that are available in the archival records. Probably there are scholars who may want to study only archaeological sites that have been discussed or mentioned in the European archival records. There are some who only study the European forts and castles. So most of their studies are geared towards the European contact in West Africa, rather than looking at probably prehistoric periods and sites. So we'll be looking at the factors that are currently shaping how archaeology and heritage studies are conducted in Ghana and the rest of the sub-region. Okay. I will pause here after the course description and see if there are some questions in the chat that I can take before we come back to continue. Okay. So if you have a question, kindly raise your hand, or we will allow you to speak. If you do not have any question also, we will go ahead and look at our, okay, our chat. See, I don't see anything in the chat room. Let's see. It's sent email, okay. It's Sakai, still Sakai business. So there is no question in the chat. Is there anybody's hand up? If you have your hands up, kindly unmute yourself and speak to us. No, nobody speaking. Or you left the computers and you are having your breakfast.
No, sir, we are here.
Okay, good.
Yes, we are here.
Excellent. I'm happy to hear your voice. Very soon I'll go back to start looking at your face. All right, so now let's look at the objectives and learning outcomes that we have for this class.
Sir,
yes.
Sir, please, I have a request.
Please go ahead.
Sir, please, I would like to know whether there will be reading material available for the literature available for the course, so that because we have 6 weeks, we don't have enough time, so that we will get it early enough so that we can go through.
Yes, we will have that. Right after this class, I'm going to share with you the reading materials, okay?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other question?
Okay, sir, thank you.
Is it Barry? You have something to say? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, so in the absence of any additional questions, let's look at the course objectives and learning outcomes. What we're saying is that the purpose of this course is to introduce you to the archaeology of the West African sub-region, okay? Especially the archaeological site findings that deal with the period 500 BC to what? 1950, okay? So essentially we are looking at 2,500 year period, 2,500 year period of development in West Africa. And West Africa is not a, it's not a small, it's not a young region. We have been here, human beings have been living in this sub-region for thousands of years. And so picking just this small part of it is just to look at the Iron Age period and also the complexities that emerge in our social organization, political organization, so on and so forth. So the whole idea is to be able to kind of introduce you to such developments in the sub-region. At the end of the course, students should be able to, so you are expected to be able to use different approaches, including oral traditions, ethnography, and documentary evidence to decipher the meaning of the archaeological record of West Africa. So here what we say essentially is that if you went to the Museum of Archaeology right now, you will find lots and lots of what archaeological remains that are displayed there. If you also went to probably the National Museum, you will find same. And as for our storages, many. Now, what we're saying is that at the end of this course, you should be able to utilize existing oral traditions, ethnographic information, and documentary sources or evidence to be able to understand or interpret and find meaning for the archaeological record of the sub-region. So, for instance, let's say you have archaeological materials that Mr. Kuma is working on from Bego, some of which are dating back to the last 1,000 years. What we're saying is that when you have such material records or archaeological records available to you, being it from Igboukwu in Nigeria or from Ife or Benin, what we expect you to be able to do is to utilize existing oral traditions of the sub-region or the particular site in question. Use ethnographic data available. We're saying ethnographic data because many of our peoples have very long histories and traditions that date back several centuries. So we still can learn things from our oral traditions and ethnographic sources to be able to what? Interpret what the archaeological record is telling us. So I, for example, work at the Krobo Mountain site and also work at Shah Hills. The archaeological records there may not be able to speak to you directly, some dating back to as far as 1,800 years ago. What we're saying is that by studying the contemporary oral traditions, ethnography, as the present-day life ways of the people, in addition to the documentary sources that Europeans have left, and also perhaps from Arabic sources, we should be able to make meaning out of the archaeological record that we are finding. You are very much aware that the archaeological records are silent by themselves. These are just material remains and landscapes. They don't speak to us directly. So we need to interrogate them using other sources of information. And here, what we have identified include what? Oral traditions, ethnography, and also, what do you call it? Documentary sources or archival information. We'll move on to look at the number 2 here. It says that you should be able to examine and understand the origins and evolution of complex societies in West Africa during the period 500 BC to 1950. So one of the objectives here, or the outcomes of this class, is that once we are done, we expect you to be able to understand the origins and evolution. So when did it start? Where did it start from? And what kinds of changes have evolved or occurred in some of these societies of West Africa. So if you took, let's say, Bono Manso, or you take Asante Manso, you take Bego, you take Salaga, what can we learn as to how did these communities or polities emerge, and what changes occurred in these polities or societies over the period 500 BC to 1920. Okay. The number 3 up there is that you should be able to analyze long-distance trade contacts, okay, and their impacts on the West African sub-region. So one of the objectives we have set to ourselves, how to mute yourselves. One of the objectives we have set out to ourselves is that we must be able to analyze long-distance trade contacts. So in this case, we have the trans-Saharan and transatlantic, and interrogate their impact on the West African sub-region. So how the trading in terms of our long-distance trade, the trans-Saharan and transatlantic, impacted social development, political development in this.
You already get provided into reason now. Are you not going for that? Why? You will mix up plus my own. I'm not saying math before. Next time you record.
Remensa, mute yourself, okay? All right, so let's look at the last.
Sorry, sir.
Here. No problem. Let's go on. So in addition to being able to analyze these trade networks and how they impacted on developments in West Africa, what we're saying is that we must also be able to understand the dynamics of archaeological theory and practice in West Africa. Essentially, this last point seeks to bring to your attention the fact that archaeological theory and practices that West Africans like you, being students of archaeology, utilize may have major impact on how you interrogate the West African. Okay. These are some of the expectations we have of you, that when you are done with this course, you should, on your own, anywhere, be able to have some understanding of these issues that we have discussed. Okay? I'm going to go out of the sharing of screen mode for a moment and take some questions that you may have. What I've indicated here is that this is a tentative course outline, and that changes could be made as we go forward. And such changes, when announced on time, isn't unusual and is a standard practice anywhere in the world. Okay, so I've stopped sharing the screen for the moment, and coming back face to face. So now you can ask your questions by looking at ourselves here. Okay. So if you have some questions, please go ahead and ask that. Okay. Any questions, contributions, or comments?
No answer.
Nothing. Okay. Okay. Then we'll go back to sharing of the screen, and but I will encourage you to have problems and ask questions. Okay. All right. So let's go back to Arch322. So these are the topics that we'll be looking at in the course of the semester. We will, what we're doing today, lecture 1, is a discussion of our syllabus. And the next topic will be changing perspectives on West Africa's past. So we'll look at how the study of West Africa's past, particularly from archaeological, heritage, and historical studies, have changed over time, okay? And then what factors have shaped the nature of the study, and how that influenced the kinds of perceptions or perspectives that we as West Africans have of our subcontinent, as well as what others have of us, what they perceive us of. Are we just borrowers of ideas from the Mediterranean region or from North Africa? Or are we capable of inventing our own ways, such as iron smelting, copper smelting? Or did we borrow everything that we learned? Our agricultural practices, our foods, is our millet our own, or did we borrow the cultivation of millet? Or did we, on our own in the West African sub-region, kind of domesticated the plants and animals that we use today? For example, the cowpea, the oil palm, certain rice, and of course, pearl millet. These are some of the questions or the perspectives that we'll be looking at when it comes to the perceptions or changing perspectives on West Africa's past. So we will look at how West Africans or our past have been kind of interpreted and perceived, and the continuing changes that we have of that. Then we look at subsistence strategies. Subsistence strategies that comprises, or that comprise what do we eat? How do we acquire our foods? How do we use trade to supplement or augment areas of shortfall? How do we use social relations, political organization to ensure that we don't perish? So subsistence goes beyond just food and eating, but it's a very survival of ourselves. And so that goes beyond our food ways and food traditions, but also the kinds of social and political relationships that we develop to enable us to survive. Among that, I mentioned trade, local trade, long distance trade. We also have agricultural practices and hunting techniques that we utilize to be able to survive. We also use marriages and alliances between different ethnic groups or polities to be able to work, to ensure that we remain secured from, say, for instance, these kinds of pandemics that we are experiencing today. This is not new. There were times in the past when human beings in West Africa faced climatic challenges, environmental challenges. They also faced diseases and pandemics like we have it today. So the question I was asking is that as part of our subsistence strategies, we will want to know how the peoples of West Africa during the last 2,500 years were able to subside, to survive in this part of the world. And so that is what we will be looking at under subsistence strategies. We're looking at plant cultivation and also domestication in West Africa. So domestication is how we either tame and also plants and animals and make them susceptible to human manipulation and utilization, okay? Then the plant cultivation part also involves both the domestication and also subsequent growing of food crops or plants such as oil palm or yam and other crops that West Africans mastered themselves. After that, we will be looking at ceramic traditions of the sub-region. Okay, so we will look at, let me admit this fellow. So we'll be looking at ceramic traditions and technology in West Africa. All over the world, as part of human sedentism or settlement, when human beings started living in specific areas and settled life, sedentism, when they stopped wandering around as what we call the hunting and gatherers, okay? Instead of just moving from place to place as pastoralists and transhumans, it got to a point that our people decided across this sub-region at different time periods to begin to settle. And Kintampo complex is one of such periods where by about 1500 BC or 3500 years ago in West Africa, especially in Ghana and Burkina and Ivory Coast, our people began to live settled life using stone tools, all right, but they started producing also ceramics. So pottery for storing water, terracotta figurines, pottery used as like a Kwabador type, the Koma terracotta figurines, and so many other kinds of ceramic products were being produced, especially in the period that we call the Iron Age. So I want to kind of also draw your attention to the fact that when we talk about the Iron Age period, it does not mean that it is only the period when we were producing metals. But the Iron Age is also the period that West Africans began to produce en masse pottery or ceramics. Why? Because people now started living sedentary lives. And also because even making of smelting of iron, copper also require the utilization of water, which had to be carried in pots and jars and all that. So hand in hand, the advent of iron technology also saw the rise or exponential rise in the production, distribution, and use of ceramics in the West African sub-region. So this is a very key topic that we'll be looking at in the course of our work, okay? We'll look at ceramic traditions and technology in West Africa. When we are done with that, we will move on to look at the case of metallurgy, okay? Metals, the tradition of making and using metal tools, metal weapons, and so on and so forth, okay? So that is what will bring us to metallurgy and its consequences. We will particularly focus on iron smelting and smithing. So how iron technology aided or led to the production of tools that led to expansion in agriculture and also the clearing of forest lands. Then weapons produced from metals that were also utilized in the warfares like spears and swords and cutlasses and so on and so forth, that were also become a very important part of the social formation processes in West Africa, as people were using some of these technological traditions or innovations to subjugate others. Those that had the technique or the technology of producing iron tools, for example, became more powerful. They could fashion out their horseshoes and fashion out their spears and weapons and wage wars against other societies in the South region that did not have iron smelting technology. Okay? The consequences of those were very widespread, and we'll be looking at that. It occurred in agriculture, it occurred in warfare, it occurred in also humans' encounter with the natural environment. Item 6 is the trans-Saharan and transatlantic commerce. So these two trading activities and networks that emerged in the sub-region during the Iron Age came in with lots and lots of consequences, just as the metallurgical traditions brought to us. So we'll be looking at the nature, what crops, what commodities were traded during the trans-Saharan trade, who were involved in the trade, how did the trade lead to the spread, for example, of Islam and literacy, the spread of West Africans from the Sahelian regions to the southern regions of Ghana, for example. We also want to look at the transatlantic commerce and see how our engagement with the Europeans affected or shaped the region of West Africa as we see it today. So if you follow carefully, pretty much these are going to be somehow straightforward. And if you manage to master some of these elements, then I'm sure we will be able to kind of realize the goals and the objectives that we set out to do. So finally, when we look at all these developments that occur in trade, in technological innovations, metallurgy, pottery, ceramics, trade connections, how did all these contribute to the rise of urbanism in the West African sub-region? Okay, so these are elements that we'll be looking at. And your lessons from the early civilizations of Africa, ARCH 214, should give you some very solid foundations for looking at the rise of urbanism in West Africa. The final lecture, which I term here as lecture number 8, will be the review of course instructors let me take that again, course review and course instructors review. So there are 2 reviews involved, meaning that the first part will take care of what? Our review of the course for your final examination purposes. And then, of course, you also have to review my performance and the performance of my colleague, Mr. Daniel Kuma, as to how we handled the course. And that is where the course instructors review comes in. Okay? All right, so this time around, you are very much aware that we are going to have 3, I think we'll see the exams portion, so let me know, Japan. Hello, Doc, please check your internet connection. Slow motion and scratches. That's not good. That doesn't sound good. Is it still doing the slow-mo?
Yes. Much more.
Yes, slow motion and scratches.
Okay, I'm changing my sitting position. Okay. Let me.
When it's slow motion.
I don't know what's happening, but this is a very strong network. And well, let's see. Maybe is it better now?
Yes, sir, it's better.
Okay, good.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Okay, so then let's continue. My apologies for that. So what I was saying is that when we look at all the topics that we discussed, right from the subsistence strategies in West Africa, comprising plant cultivation and domestication, when we look at ceramic traditions and technology in the sub-region, we look at metallurgical traditions and their consequences, as well as the trans-Saharan trade and the transatlantic commerce. That should dovetail us into the rise of urbanism. So moving from the general concept of complex society, meaning that we have large population, we have division of labor, we have class stratification. Some are more important than others. Others are leaders, others are slaves, unfortunately, in some cases. There also arose another level of complexity, which is termed urbanism. So what I was saying is that the lectures or the discussions will end with the rise of urbanism. We want to see how all these developments that I talked about culminated in the rise of urbanism. And Mr. Kumar is an expert on this, and he will be taking this in the course of our lectures. Okay, so now let's look at the final exams will take place during the finals week. Of course, that will be what will happen, and so there will be no exceptions. Okay, then the format of the class will be in class, online, in the field. If things work well, we should also have that. Now, what is the grading scheme? So I have outlined here. Your first IA will constitute 30%, which will come very soon. You are aware of that because we don't have time. But that doesn't mean I'll be asking you things that you have not learned. Bright, your hand is up. Kindly go ahead and talk.
Yeah, look.
Yeah.
Please, how is the IS gonna be?
You are jumping the gun. You are jumping the gun. They say don't suck the light soup from the fufu or something like that. We'll get there, okay? We'll get there. All right. For now, let's try to just digest the course outline, and then we'll get there. Okay. Hi everyone. Somebody sends everyone in the waiting room, and I keep admitting people. Maybe admissions has ended. All right. So your first IA. The first IA will be constitute 30% of your end of semester exams. The second IA will be 40%. Oh, okay. Then the final one will be 30 marks. Look, you all know it's not, we teach you must acknowledge that we haven't gone on break almost like how many, since the COVID started and we came back. Because by the time we are done teaching this, there is another level 400 and 100 are in. And then now
your internet connection.
It's still bad.
Sir, please, we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Oh, there.
Yes, please. Sir, please go over the dates for the IA.
Okay, but can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there are no dates yet. What we have here are the components that will constitute 100%. So I mentioned that your first IA probably 2 weeks from now will be 30%. The second one will be 40%. And the final exams will be only 30%, okay? So that is it. Attendance is required and all that. You also know about the plagiarism. Some of you were penalized in the 323 class because definitely you either copy from your friends or you just copy and pasted things from the internet. Let's try not to do that this time around, okay? That is a dangerous practice. Can you hear me? If you cannot hear me, please let somebody type that in the chat so that I can.
Sir, please kindly repeat yourself again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so what I said was that the exams, the final exam is 30%. The 2 IAs will constitute 70%. And then I mentioned that you should be mindful of the plagiarism laws or regulations. It's a very serious crime to copy from your friends and also copy from the internet and just paste, okay, when you are giving assignment, because then that will be a problem. Okay, somebody says they can hear me now. Hooray. I promise this. I'll change my location. There's a hand up. Please go ahead and speak to us. Is it a painting, right?
So I wanted to. Sir, I want to know whether the IEs all will be online, yeah, or some will be in form of assignments.
It's still early yet. I have not decided completely on that.
Okay, so please decide on online assignments.
Please, we can help you decide.
Okay.
Yes.
Certainly there will be one group work. There will be one group work which you will do in class. It's going to be a map work, okay? I'll give you some maps, and it's a very popular test I have been running for some time. So there will be a map. We will all sit in the classroom in groups, and you will identify certain places and zones in the sub-region, okay? So that will be a group work, and that will be your second assignment. One, of course, will be on your own, and that might be the take-home. Certainly, it will be a take-home because I want you to write well. Yes, I think besides the map.
Thank
work,
you, sir.
You're welcome. Besides the map work, the rest, the other one will be sent to you by email, okay? All right, so let's move on to, today essentially we have looked at the lecture 1, which is the syllabus. There are reading, each topic has a reading material. So our next topic will have a chapter from a publication, and the title of the chapter will be Introduction, Changing Perspectives on Africa's Past. This is by Anstor, one of our senior partners who is at the University of Alberta, so in Canada. Then there will be a second paper titled 2000 Years of West African History. And this will be found in Redrick's work titled Asian Middle Niger, Urbanism. Well, I think even if you can't hear, you can see, right? You can see. So these are just those of you who are looking for materials to read. These are all available in PDF. I'll pour them on you. Okay, so we'll see. This was designed originally for a longer period. We'll see how to make sure you read it well. Judith, is it Judedia? Wow, Mr. Penty, Judedia. I've not heard that name. Or is it Jedidia? You want to take us back to the Bible?
Jedidiah.
Jedidiah.
Yeah, Jedidiah, sir.
You want us to go back to Mizraim or what? Okay, I don't know the meaning, but is it Hebrew?
It's
what is the meaning?
It means God's lover. Second Samuel 12:25.
Your own is good. Okay, great. It's a good name. Well, when you love your neighbor, then you love God too. So
that's money, much grabber.
Okay, so I will share. I already have shared a course outline with your class reps to share with you. If you already have them, then you will see that these reading materials are already available. Okay. You have explained the meaning of your name. That's good. Okay. Then the metallurgy will have a couple of readings. I don't want you to start panicking because you see so many readings. Okay. Certainly, some of them you cannot do without them. Others you may be able to select one or two and leave the rest. But it's going to be intense at the level of speed, but also of the human hours you will be spending on it. 6 weeks is like a dream. And, I hope you'll be able to make the best out of it. Okay, so on that note, I will bring in the course outline. The end to the course outline, and also then we can take other questions. If we still have some time, I will look at something else. You have any questions or questions that you wish to ask? It will be good to hear. I hope you are all staying safe. The pandemic is there. Huh? They say now we have a Delta variant. We will all be down for. Well, since you did not ask any questions, I have found the easiest way to do it is to probably start the work. Okay, so I'll give you maybe 3 minutes break. You can take a walk and come back or stretch yourself. Classes will resume in 3 minutes. Don't sign out. Just hang out there. I can hear many of you running.
If you only pick me on it, Lauren. I'm more point scratching, Leon. I already scratched it. So trying to know. I'm doing anything. Hey, who's bigger is it? And it was and I was in Mary, and chorus. Now repeat now, but different words like.
Okay, so we have 1 more minute to be done with our break. Good. All right. So we are back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We want to just have a quick overview of our next lecture, or our real lecture, which is looking at changing perspectives on West Africa's past. Now, a cursory look at this map of West Africa should show us, highlight some of the important archaeological sites and polities, complex societies that developed in West Africa during the period under consideration. So you can see that we have Ghana, we have Elmina in Ghana, we have Elmina here, we have Benin, we have Boku, we have Calabar, we have Ife, Uyo, is it Tada, Nok, Old Oyo, we have Gao, Jene Jeno, very important site, Tekdaust in Mauritania, and so on and so forth. You can also clearly see the Sahara Desert, and then we move into the Sahelian region, and then later to the Savannah, and then to the forest regions or the tropical rainforest. So these are some of the sites that will be coming up as we go forward. So ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelt as we go along. Okay, so let me see, there is a chat if it has to do with us. Somebody says he can't see the screen. Is it a general problem?
No, sir.
Okay.
No.
So it means you can see, right?
Apart from the breaks, we can see your screen, sir.
Awesome. Okay, then let's box on. All right, so here we have a summary of what we seek to talk about today. We say that West Africa's archaeology is still in its infancy. So compared to other regions of the world, I mean, archaeology became a scientific discipline, as you are well aware, by the what? Who can answer that? I can send you Mumu. When did archaeology become accepted as a scientific study or approach to studying the human past?
In the 1960s.
19th century.
Say Nicholas, 1960.
1960. Is it the same as 19th century?
In the 19th century.
19th century.
In the 1960s.
Yes. 055. You got it.
Say the moment.
Huh?
Sir, late 1960s.
Late 1960s. Hey,
yes, sir.
By late 1960s, we already have the new archaeology.
Yeah, just
Sir, 1980.
Hey.
16th century.
Only I will find that grow. Play. I know how to get you.
1877.
Yeah, you said the mid 19th century. Yes, from the 1850s onwards, archaeology became accepted as a scientific discipline. You know that. By that time, the old archaeology emerged. You should know that. So please, Don't learn and forget. Learn
Alright,
to
sir.
poor pass and forget. So 19th century, yes, mid 19th century. So that's why we were saying that contributions of what do you call it? Darwin, his theory, and the 3H system, the Industrial Revolution, all these were developments in the mid 19th century. So by that time, the discipline emerged. Okay, by the 1960s, you are talking about the new archaeology began, where they were tired of the old archaeology. Okay, so archaeology became a scientific discipline by the mid 19th century at least. Okay. All right, so let's box on. Now, what we know is that in Ghana, by maybe the 1960s, we have some people practicing archaeology, but they were not trained archaeologists. And so that's why we're saying in West Africa, the discipline is still in its infancy because we don't have many people studying it. In fact, when you mention archaeology, some people have no idea what we are talking about. They think it's geology. But I think that trend is changing. I was so surprised when my little niece, who is 9 years old, when I asked them to dress their profession or whatever they call it, a career, she made a mother to sew a Indiana Jones dress for her and a hat because she wanted to be an archaeologist. So at least we are going or getting somewhere, but we are still in the infancy level. Okay, so essentially, as a result, what we're saying is that the picture of the region's past is still developing. Okay, so what we are saying is that as we speak, at this very material moment, archaeology or archaeological practice and heritage study in West Africa is not as old as we find it in other parts of the world. This means that we are still learning about our culture histories. We are still trying to identify our sites and also develop sites and regional chronologies. We don't even have the money to do radiocarbon dates or dating. And so it's not just that we are late, we are also not investing in it. Mostly some individuals, and again, foreigners are paying for you to date your site. You can only dance to their tune. So what we're saying as it is today is that the discipline is non-matured in this part of the world. A lot remains to be done, okay? I think I jumped the gun. Okay, go left. Oops. Okay. Then I don't know how I set up this Zoom that everybody that is coming will have to knock at the door. So really irritating. Number two, we say that newer research questions, methodology, interpretation are being produced. So compared to the previous period, maybe from the 1960s all the way to the 1980s, the archaeology in Ghana was dominated by European expatriate archaeologists. But things are changing. You have many West Africans now also practicing archaeology, researching their own topics, asking their own questions and applying different methodologies that is suitable to them, including ethnoarchaeology, oral tradition, looking at ethnographic methods, and some archival records that exist, okay? So now we are saying we're doing newer research questions. We're asking newer research questions. Like when we went to look at the case at Media, for those of you who were able to make it, that is a site that probably Europeans will not be interested in studying because it's not directly related to European involvement, and so they don't study that. We may be interested in the history of the Ghana and the interaction with the accounts and other wars that were fought in this country. So we will be interested in looking at that media site and see what developments occurred there. We may also ask different questions, you know, like today, if I had a position to ask any major questions, I will ask myself, why is the corona not killing us in Ghana as was expected? Then we find the answers. As we speak now, even this question, is the French people who are paying scientists in Ghana and Kenya to find out why we are not dying? For us, it's okay that we are not dying. We are just there. We are not investing in things that matter to us. Okay? And the same applies to archaeology and heritage studies, which is not cool. Although we are starting to invest in it at the individual level and some corporate levels, the impact is still not strong. Number 3, we are saying Eurocentric ideas affected earlier work. So what we're saying is that a lot of the interpretations that were done of archaeological discoveries in this West African sub-region were deemed either to have come from the Near East, North Africa, either is metallurgical traditions or ceramic traditions. Like nothing good could have come from West Africa. Everything that we had should have come from outside. And the narrative is presented in such a way that even today, we all think we came from Egypt or Israel, not brew, and so if you came from Israel, then you can go back. Those of us who didn't come from anywhere, we will stay here. Okay. But a lot of the traditions that we have today about our origins have been heavily influenced by these early interpretations of archaeological finds in this region. So for example, the bronze terracottas and other figurines that were found in ancient Ife and Benin were deemed to have been produced by some foreigners, maybe Germans and all that bullshit. So these things have been going on for a very long time. And that is why we're saying some of the early works that have been done in the sub-region concerning our past tended to be Eurocentric because they don't see we as being capable of doing anything good for ourselves, because they came and did anything they liked to us, sold our people to slavery. And so there's no much left to be talked about, okay? After all, they brought us cassava and corn, and we have gobbled it down our throat. So that is what it's saying. Just like in the case of the coronavirus, we don't have any vaccine here. We are begging them for it. We don't have it. Where we have big Land Cruisers, we are driving on the wrong side of the road. That's what we do. Anyways, I hope I'm not confusing you, adding some of the modern elements into this. Finally, item 4. The development of West Africa's complex society is complex and complicated. We will explain why we think it is not a straightforward thing. Let's discuss West Africa's complexity. Okay, now let's look at what we have as outline here. So what we're saying is that in this case, or this particular presentation, which I already done the intro, we want to look at some of the statement of basic facts. I already done that. What we have next are some key terms and concepts. I'll give you a couple of questions. Then also we look at the sources of information available to archaeologists working in Ghana for the reconstruction and interpretation of West Africa's past. And then a sample of the quiz test that I'll be giving you. That one, I say you write it in class. Okay, you write it in class. So this will be very fast and painless. Okay, so let's start with our first question. Believe you me, this question, you will meet it in your final exams. So if you want to start thinking about it now, you have to start. I start the quote. It says, African archaeological distribution maps tend to show the distribution of archaeological research rather than that of archaeological evidence, unquote, by Graham Conner. So Conner is telling us that you have read Conner's work, right, for early civilizations of Africa. Did you? You didn't?
We did.
Okay, beautiful.
We did.
So this quotation is from that work. Okay, it's titled, is it the early civilization, African civilization by Graham Coda. Anywho, let's continue. So what we're saying here simply is that if you look at the distribution maps of West Africa, of what we consider as archaeological sites in West Africa, we are saying they are mostly reflective of what we have been able to do in terms of research. So you may find maybe 500 sites in West Africa as our archaeological site. But the point we are making is that that 500 sites and where they are located isn't the reality. It does not portray the full picture of what West Africa's past, but rather that is the picture of where research has been done and is being done. So the implication is that if we were to have more money and do our own kinds of research, we may discover more types of sites, also sites that can spread across many more parts of the sub-region than we currently have. So that is basically what this quotation is saying. It also has to do with who is paying for the research, what methodological paradigms are being used or theoretical frameworks. They shape what we see. We are saying as we expand on the technology we use, the methodology we use for archaeology, and the adoption of new theoretical frameworks, we may end up having a different sets of archaeological sites also distributed across fairly different areas than we have today. For example, in the earlier times, almost every researcher was avoiding the forest regions because it was believed that in the forest regions, preservation of archaeological artifacts was not strong. So why bother yourself going to dig in the forest? But today we know that that isn't true. That even in the forest regions, we can find evidence of what? Of past activity in the forest. Also, if you took, for example, research into yams, it was believed that since yam was a tuber crop and largely will have gotten rotten in the archaeological record, there was no need to even look at when did Ghanaians start domesticating yam, when did West Africans start eating yam. But as I speak today, because of improvement in technological analysis of archaeological materials, such as the study of lipids or starch from crops like cassava, people can just analyze the starch on stone tools and be able to determine whether that was what? A starch from cassava, starch from yam or not. So things are changing rapidly, and that is shaping now how the picture of Ghana's and West Africa's archaeological maps are panning out. Okay. Okay, now let me pick a couple also of the highlights here. We said the earliest excavations were aimed at the regional centers mentioned in Arabic sources. So you see the point we're making. So as again, for example, scholars who were studying West Africa's past in the previous previous decades were focusing on what? Sites that were mentioned in the Arabic record. So they may be dealing with what? Ego, they may be dealing with Ife, and so on and so on, because these sites have already been mentioned in Arabic record. Okay? Is it, can you hear me? Is it understood? Am I clear to you?
Yes, sir, you are.
Beautiful. Okay, let's make some progress. I think next time we'll meet in the classroom so that those of you who are scratching your nose, I'll see you. Then number 2, we said that the tropical forest regions were neglected by early investigators. That's a point I already made, or I just made that, because people thought archaeological sites in the forest regions were not properly preserved, they were avoiding those places. Today, people are working in the forest region. So that's another trend. Remember, the topics were changing perspectives on what? West Africa's past. So we are seeing what has changed and what other developments are occurring in how we study West Africa's past. And so some of these straight away are telling you about what is changing in how the past of West Africa is studied. And I want you to understand some of these concepts very early on before we box on, okay? In addition to the point I just made, we also say that many view the development of artistic achievement, statecraft, as coming to West Africa through diffusion. So again, I was telling you about the story that almost everything good that we have in this sub-region is purported to have been imported. For example, we were thought to not have developed our own or invented our own iron smelting skills or agricultural production, that all these things came to us from the north or the northern part of the continent through trade and so on and so forth. But some of these are being debunked because we are having more evidence and new archaeological findings that are contrary to the idea that whether it's artwork, like the terracotta figurines, kudu, and all those things that are found in West Africa that look good, such as the bronze and terracotta figurines of Ife and Benin. They are thought to have come from elsewhere, the technology. But what we're saying is that we are now finding new developments in the archaeological record that are giving us contrary opinion. Also, we talk about statecraft, like governance, chieftaincy institutions, leadership, social organization. All they're saying is that these things came to us again from outside the sub-region. These are not things we agree with. And finally, the Arab and European traders, that they came through us through Arab and European traders. Of course, many things came to us through the trans-Saharan and transatlantic trade. Formal education through transatlantic, some building architecture, our religions today, many of our foods. But that doesn't mean that we had nothing and that we are just empty vessels and everything that we had today were poured in from outside this subcontinent. It's not true. And we will be seeing this as we go along in the course of this lecture. Okay, so here we have some archaeological sites of the sub-region dating back to the 2nd millennium AD. Okay, so you see in the 2nd millennium, we have what? 2nd millennium, you know what we are talking about. That's at least from AD 1001. Once you start 1000, you know we are in the 2nd millennium. Is that right? Okay. This is from GSS Tom. Then let's see. So we have Gorée Island related to the transatlantic trade. We have Kun in Ivory Coast. We have Elmina. We have Cape Coast. We have Bego. We have Banda. We have the Wida in the Savi. We have Basar. We have Odoyo. We have Ife, Benin. These are sites that have been investigated and studied dating back to the 2nd millennium. Now, what we were saying earlier with that question was that if we probably have utilized different techniques and did not rely on European records and Arabic records for our source of information, and also, Kendrick, I'll get back to you shortly. We may have had archaeological sites located all over these places, but because of the way we were studying the past, we did not have a map reflecting that. Okay, Kendrick, please, can you ask your question?
Sir, please, why is it that I'm seeing Benin City located in Nigeria?
Yes, Benin is in Nigeria.
Hello, sir.
Yes, it's in Nigeria. These are Can you hear me? I'll say yes, it
I'm
is in
seeing Benin
Nigeria.
City in Nigeria. In the map.
Yes, we are not saying Benin. Benin City is an ancient polity. Okay? It's like you find, if I show you a map that of the first millennium, you will see Ghana in Mauritania. Hmm? Do you get a point? Yes, Henry, you can ask your question.
His network is not good, I guess.
Okay, they say your network is, yes, you see, you are learning a lot and leaving many things behind too. If you read carefully your 214 archaeology of early civilizations of West Africa, you should know that Benin City is in Benin. It's in Nigeria, not Benin. And you can see where it is on the map. This is not a mistake. And I keep mentioning Benin and Ife as examples of early civilizations or complex societies of Nigeria. When you are talking of contemporaries, maybe you are going to be mentioning Dahomey or other places in Benin, present-day Benin. So whether the Beninois took the name after they named their country after independence, or at independence after Benin City, that is another matter. And as you can see the geography there, Benin is just next to Nigeria there. So I don't know the history about the origins of Benin today and then Benin City. Benin City is an ancient settlement, okay? And I was saying, just as we go to Mauritania, you have ancient Ghana. What is it called? Ghana. Today you come to Ghana, way down here, they call it Ghana. So don't confuse the two.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Then in the first millennium, so anytime between AD 0 to 999, we are in the first millennium, okay? And in the first millennium, you can see that we have lesser sites. The sites that were known, we have in Ghana, Danse Manso, we have Bego, we have Bono Manso, we have Daboya, we have Birim. Because immediately we go to the first millennium, which is earlier. Elmina is vanished, Cape Coast is vanished. You understand? Because they were not in existence at that time. But Ife, Benin City, Igboku, and a few others were still there, okay? So the map quiz will involve some of these maps, and about 3 maps you'll be working on. So I will claim some of these towns and ask you to fill in the towns and all that. Okay, you are going to, because you have to know, where these cities are. So especially Benin City, I'll put it there. We'll go and put it in Dahomey and you get your mark. Okay. Now let's look at some key concepts here. So we have what we call epistemology, knowing how we know what we know. The study of knowledge is epistemology. We have Stone Age, we have Iron Age, we have complex society, urbanism, hierarchy, state formation, monumentality, diffusionism, processual archaeology, post-processual archaeology. We have key sites like Jenegeno, Bego, Taruga, Nok, Benin City, Dahomey, Elmina. Then domestication of plants and animals in West Africa. We have to know where and what crops were domesticated and what animals were tamed. Then we have to know about the later West African kingdoms and states like Dahomey, Asante, and Denchra, and so on and so forth, okay? So these are some of the things I want you to kind of pay attention to, find ways of learning about them. All right, so let's take these two questions. I think we'll be closing soon. It's past 11. Okay, so how do state formation processes in West Africa reflect the diversity of the sub-region and its contact with other regions of the world? So what we're asking is that if we're looking at how states were formed, complex societies developed in West Africa, how can we account for that development by looking at the diversity of the sub-region in terms of geography, in terms of its people and culture, and how they interacted with other parts of the world through the trans-Saharan and transatlantic trade, and how these trades and contacts affected how the states were formed or established and organized. Now, question 2 is, what kinds of evidence show that West African social complexity developed in diverse landscapes or environments in the Iron Age? So what we're asking here is that if you look at West Africa and kingdoms and complex societies such as, what do you call it? Bergo, Ife, Benin City, Adanse Manso, Asante Manso, Bono Manso. How can we adduce for the evidence that show this level of complexity that developed? Okay, so say what kinds of evidence show that West African social complexity developed in diverse landscapes or environments in the sub-region? So clearly, even when I showed you the map, you can see that many of these sites were found in different landscapes, in the savanna, some in the forest regions, some in the Sahelian region, some in the savanna forest ecotone, like Bergo. Bono Manso was right in the forest, Asante Manso, and other places that developed, like Salaga in the savanna regions, and so on and so forth. So these are Ghanaian examples, but we have to expand to other parts of West Africa. Now, when it comes to our understanding of West Africa's past and how we reconstruct and interpret it, we rely on some of these core data sources: archaeology, linguistics, particularly historical linguistics, written records, being it Islamic records or European records, oral tradition and ethnohistory, what we learn from our oral traditions, oral accounts, what we know about ethnography, our present-day society, what we learn from them. And then, of course, genetics. By studying genetic pool, we will know and we are able to determine the movement of our people, migration patterns, and so on and so forth. And finally, geography and the natural environment. These are sources from which we can tell a lot about the development of our people and their past in the West African sub-region. Since you are not asking much question, I'm just going to use 2 minutes to highlight some of the materials here. So in terms of the archaeological material remains, we're talking of the figurines from Nok in Nigeria, for example, and then associated iron producing sites like Taruga. Okay, so the Iron Age was not just the time for production, as I said, of iron, but also the emergence of artistic expressions like these beautiful terracotta figurines that you see from North in Nigeria. Okay, but again, they were attributing these to people outside West Africa because they thought West Africans were not intelligent enough to do this. Okay, so besides that, we also have archaeological records that we excavate. Other archaeological, we have some of the written sources here and archival sources. ancient European depictions and drawings, rock arts, and when it comes to the transatlantic, we have the other diversity we see in the contact with the other parts of the world. Trade contacts and what do I have there? Source. And trade routes, okay. And trans-Saharan trade routes. So these are the transatlantic trade route, the way it connected the West African sub-region. European records and what we can see and tell from them. Our natural environment and what we can learn from them and how our people adapted to them. The diversity of our environment. Again, some archaeological records. Indicating when, for example, we started producing millet in this part of the world. The evidence of ceramics going back to 9400 BC. So in Nigeria, the earliest boat from the Funa dating to 8,000 years ago. So these are some of the sources that we use: linguistics, and of course the geography, the environments we developed in. Some of the crops we developed and domesticated, and the evidence of when we produce them. Okay, these are domesticates from West Africa. All right, so this is just a highlight to show you the region. Now, finally, the quiz, one of the quizzes you'll be dealing with will be this map. I will remove some things in it. You will do the reading and you will fill this map with the relevant information when you meet the paper in the exams room. So we are not going to waste time at all. I give you the reading, I do the lecture, you do the reading, you do the discussion, you come to class, you write the IA, get your 30%. We continue. Okay, so yeah, so these 3 maps I'll be using to test you. The things going in the same direction. Okay, so for the map quiz, I'm going to examine your knowledge on these zones in which different complex societies developed, which also shape their character. And then this will be the second map. As I said, I'll clean some things and ask you to fill in. And then there's a third one. You're scared of that. Okay, so finally, these questions I've already asked you, but they are repeated here. Okay, maybe when I share the recorded version, you can be able to go over the questions. So ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I wish to thank you all for staying in the class for the entire duration, and I hope you picked some lessons out of this. I apologize once again for the break in the network intermittently, and I promise that I will reposition myself in a better internet next time when we meet. Is there any question? I now exit the. If there's anything you can ask me and we can look at before we close. It's 20. It's 11:20. You have 2 more minutes to ask your questions and then we can. Okay. Okay, so in the absence of any questions, ladies and gentlemen, there's a new message here. Let's see. It says, sir, please, you will be uploading the lecture, the slides. I don't have slides. I have Zoom, recorded Zoom. When I share the Zoom, the slide is inside the Zoom. You can't know the page. Why are you?
Doc. You there?
Slides.
Oh, so we need slides.
Please, can you at
Doc,
least send us
we need slides because day ground. Day ground for this life inside.
This slides syndrome will kill you.
Oh, so we big.
My way killer black. Okay. I'll see what I cannot. Typically, I don't share the slide.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead and ask the question.
Please, I'm saying that at least can you send us a screenshot of the map so that we can see it clearly?
Yes, please. I'll do that. You're going to see them in your readings too. In fact, that's why in the slide I put the map, the page number where the map was copied. I can see is it Bright and his colleague there? They are performing for us. Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the semester. Do well, stay healthy, stay safe. Au revoir. Take care. Bye.
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 Hey, pretty girls.
Love
Pretty
you.
girls.
Hello.
Please eat yourselves, okay?
Bye.
Manta Usu and Crystal.
Your beans finished or what? Why are you showing me your empty beans bowl?
Manta Usu doesn't want me to talk to her.
I'm not married.
Hey, Bright.